So you want to own a subway, millions of riders every single day, fixed routes, fixed fares. No competitor can just build a rival tunnel next door. On paper, it looks like a monopoly with a station on every corner. Here is the paradox. The business transit systems on Earth still lose money on almost every ride. More riders don't fix that. More riders just mean more trains, more staff, more wear on the tracks. The math doesn't scale the way people assume. That is the real reason cities keep begging for bailouts instead of collecting profits. Every major system on the planet runs on the same way. Fares come in, costs pile up faster. The gap gets filled by someone else, usually the taxpayer, rarely the rider. New York, London, Tokyo, Paris, different currencies, same basic math underneath. Stick with this. The gap between packed train and profitable system is where this whole business quietly falls apart. Tier 1 is the bootstrapped play, if you can even call it that. A single short streetcar line, maybe 2 miles, $10 to $50 million gets you a rails, a few stops, and 1 or 2 old cars bought secondhand. No real network effect, no real reach. It moves people a few blocks and calls it a system. Most cities build this to test the idea before committing real money, and most riders barely notice they exist. Tier 2 is mid-market, the real light rail line, 10 to 20 miles long, $500 million to $2 billion. Now you need signals, power stations, and a fleet of new rail cars. This is where cities start selling the project on economic growth, not just travel time. New apartments, new shops, land near the stations suddenly worth more. City councils love this tier because the ribbon cutting photo is easy. The decades of upkeep that follow are not. Tier 3 is institutional, a full heavy rail subway system, $10 billion and up, often much more. Once tunnels are involved, multiple lines, hundreds of stations, thousands of workers. At this scale, you are not running a train line anymore. You are running a small government with union contracts, safety regulators, and a debt load that outlives the mayor who approved it. Every decision here gets political before it gets financial, because a subway this size touches almost every voter in the city. Here is the everyday metaphor that explains this business. Think of a subway like a giant shared taxi that never stops moving. One taxi is split between thousands of strangers running all day. The fare each rider pays barely covers gas. It never covers the driver's salary, the maintenance, or the car itself. Someone else has to cover the rest. In a subway, that someone is the taxpayer. The taxi never parks. It never rests. It just keeps circling. And the bill keeps growing whether anyone notices or not. That's why the industry lives by one brutal number: fare box recovery ratio. It is simple. It is the share of operating costs that fare actually cover. Most big systems hit somewhere between 30 and 70%. The rest comes from subsidies, taxes, and government transfers. No fare hike closes that gap. Riders would simply stop riding, push the price too high, and the whole system loses the exact people it was built to move. The second term worth knowing is headway. It's just the time between trains. Shorter headways means more trains, which means happier riders. But it also means more drivers, more power, more wear on every rail. Better service and higher cost move together. You can't improve one without paying for the other. Ask any rider what they want and they will say shorter waits. Ask any budget officer and they will wince at the price tag attached to that wish. There is a third lever most riders never think about: ancillary revenue. Add space on train cars, retail leases inside stations, naming rights on a platform. None of it moves a single train, but all of it chips away at the gap fares can't close. Smart systems treat every square foot of a station as something that can be rented, not just walked through. Here is the counterintuitive fact that breaks normal business logic. Adding more riders can make a subway's finance worse, not better. Past a certain point, a packed train forces you to buy more rail cars, hire more staff, and run more service. Costs rise faster than fare revenue. Success in this business often costs more than failure. A half-empty train is cheap to run and looks bad in the headlines. A packed train looks great in the headlines and quietly drains the budget behind the scenes. Long, straight platforms exist so trains load fast and leave fast. Every extra second at a station adds up across hundreds of trips a day. Bright lighting isn't about comfort, it's about safety scores and fewer incident reports, which are cheaper than lawsuits. Turnstiles are placed to funnel riders past and space and retail kiosks, because fear alone were never going to pay the bills. Even the width of stairwell gets studied, because a slow crowd at rush hour becomes a delay, and a delay becomes a cost somewhere down the line. Escalators run at a fixed pace, timed so a crowd clears a platform before the next train rolls in, not because anyone is in a rush to please them. The invisible cost hiding under all of it is the tunnel itself. Concrete, steel, and old cabling don't last forever. Every year, a system defers maintenance to save money. It builds a bigger bill for the future. That deferred bill doesn't show up on this year's budget. It shows up as a crumbling platform, a broken signal, or a shutdown line 10 years later. Nobody cuts a ribbon for maintenance. Everybody notices when it fails. Some of the oldest systems in the world are still running trains through tunnels built more than a century ago, patched and repatched, because tearing it all out and starting fresh would cost more than most cities can borrow in one shot. Now the two ways this business actually kills its owners. Both stories sound different on the surface, but both come down to the same mistake: promising numbers the real world was never going to deliver. The first is capital structure problem. London's Underground tried a public-private deal in the early 2000s. A private group called Metronet took on 2/3 of the maintenance work. It promised efficiency. Instead, it ran off debt it couldn't repay, and in 2007 it collapsed into administration. The public system had guaranteed most of that private debt. When Metronet failed, taxpayers were left holding well over £1 billion in losses. The private fix cost more than the public problem it was meant to solve. The whole point of the deal was to shift risk away from the government. In the end, the risk landed right back where it started, only bigger. The second failure mode is market mismatch. Sydney built a private rail link straight to its airport ahead of the 2000 Olympics at a cost near $900 million. Planners expected roughly 48,000 riders a week. Actual demand came in near a fifth of that forecast. High access fees on top of normal fares scared off casual riders. The company couldn't cover its costs and went into receiverships almost as soon as it opened. The tunnels were solid. The stations were modern. The ridership math simply wasn't there, and no amount of good engineering could fix a forecast built on wrong assumptions. So here's the whole business in one sentence. Value equals riders times fare minus the cost of running enough service to make riders want to show up in the first place. Run well. Most subways still land at an operating ratio far below break-even, often needing public subsidy just to keep trains moving. Hong Kong's MTR is the rare exception, turning a profit by building shopping malls and apartment towers directly above and around its stations, and using that real estate income to cover what fares never could. Its trains are almost a side effect of a much bigger property business, one that happens to come with a subway attached for free. The system rewards exactly one kind of operator, the one who treats a subway as a real estate business with tracks attached, not a train business, hoping fares will someday add up. Everyone else is just running a very expensive public service and hoping nobody asks who is paying for it. The riders never will. They are too busy just trying to get to work on time.